Do you ever want to dive deeper into the Bible, but you just don't know where to begin or struggle to feel like you even have the time? Maybe when you read the Bible, you get frustrated because you know there's got to be more in there. You just have no clue how to get it out. Or maybe you want to know the Bible better, and so you're looking for any resource to help. Well, then this is the podcast for you. Welcome to the Context and Color of the Bible podcast. We are two sisters. I'm Erica, and my sister's looking at her phone.
I was texting myself a reminder about this. I'm Veronica.
We love to study the Bible, and we love to help others understand it better. When it comes to our own study of Scripture, we have found that in bringing back the context of Scripture, it adds to our understanding. It actually adds color to the black and white pages of the text.
Well, big mouth, what do you want to say?
I know. I thought I'd throw you for a little loop right there.
I went with it.
You did, actually. I was quite impressed. But I have to say, hearing Bryan talk about God's response to Habakkuk last week kept making me think of Job and how Job is constantly throwing his complaints to God, and God responds not by answering Job's questions, but with kind of an attitude of, "Who are you, Job, to question me?"
Yeah.
And I like, and I don't know if this is disrespectful, but I like the idea that God has some oomph to him. Yeah, that he's not afraid to push back and be like, "I'm God. Let's remember this for a minute. I get that you're hurting and you're in pain, but I'm still God." To me, that's, I don't know, maybe that's a wacko thought, but that's a comforting thought.
Okay.
For me. I guess it makes him feel like God.
He's taken a stand. He knows who he is.
He knows who he is.
He's
yeah.
got some confidence.
He's got confidence. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, throw your complaints to God, but he can give it back.
He'll push back.
He can push back. And I guess like a child with a parent,
Right.
you know, you need to know you can hit a wall with your parents.
Right.
And you can't.
There's
Comfort in that. Yeah.
Stability and confidence.
Yes. You're only going to let me go so far.
Yeah.
And then you are going to put your foot down and go, "No, I'm God. I know you're hurting, but I'm God."
Do you have a child that ever makes you do that?
Oh, that's
Pick a
another
day.
story. Yeah. Pick a child, pick a day, any child, any day.
But with that, then, we're going to jump right into chapter 1, verses 12 through 17, as we had Habakkuk's initial complaint, vent to God.
Yep.
Last week, we saw God's reply, like Erica just talked about. And now we're coming back today to how does Habakkuk respond when God pushes back and kind of pulls rank.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to report that Habakkuk doesn't come back with a snarky response.
Yay, Habakkuk!
So he's learning. But there are similarities when you look at his first complaint and his second complaint. Similarities, some terms are reused. And he's still not thrilled with the situation, but
I don't blame him.
if you look at his tone, though, his tone is a bit different. His approach is different. So he starts in verse 12. Are you not from everlasting, O Lord, my God, my Holy One? We shall not die. O Lord, you have ordained them, referring to the Babylonians we talked about last week, as judgment. And you, O rock, have established them for reproof. And so you don't get this in his first complaint.
No, because already it seems like he knows, okay, I get it, God.
He's like,
what you're doing.
Here's who you are, and I am not. You know, kind of along the lines of what Job learned. So already we've got a positive change or shift in his tone and approach to how he's dialoguing with the King of the universe. Shall we
A little more
remind
respectfully.
ourselves? Yeah. So and that's good. And okay, verse 13, you who are of purer eyes than to see evil, evil, and cannot look at wrong. Why do you idly look at traitors and remain silent when the wicked swallows up the man more righteous than he? So again, we've got those key words, look and see.
Yep.
Habakkuk started with them. God used them in his response. Now Habakkuk's still keying into those two words. He still look around and see how can you look at this and remain silent? And he says, when the wicked are swallowing up the righteous. So Habakkuk, his tone is softened, and he seems to be accepting of this judgment that's coming. I think he's recognizing, our society probably deserves all that you've described, God. But he does have a problem with God's plan, and his problem is basically, God, how can the wicked swallow up those who are more righteous? Are you, a good God, going to use these awful people? I know the nation of Judah isn't doing great. We're sinning. We have abandoned your Torah. We've twisted judgment. But God, I don't understand. Aren't we a little bit better than them? So he's got this relative scale.
Kind of comparison. I'm not as bad as them.
Not as bad as
deal
them.
with their badness
Right.
before you deal with my badness.
And God will respond. He has a response to this in chapter 2. But that's one of the problems here that Habakkuk he's wrestling with. Earlier it was just the sin and corruption that's around him, and now, because God's brought him into his confidence and said, yep, here's what's about to happen. Now Habakkuk's like, wait a minute, that is a problem. Yes, the corruption is a problem, but now this is a problem.
Right?
Habakkuk, he's got problems all around, and they're just getting deeper.
I'd pull a Jonah. We're dead. It's better for me to die.
Yep. So Habakkuk continues, and he starts to use some imagery here of fishing imagery, which is appropriate because when I studied this book of the Bible, the Chaldeans themselves, I think, had a fishing skill, or were renowned a bit for fishing, not like deep sea fishing, but along the rivers and the Tigris River that they lived. And so Habakkuk's saying, you, God, make mankind like fish of the sea, like crawling things that have no ruler. Okay, so you're imagining like a school of fish that's kind of flitting this way and that way. You think about, is there a leader to those school of fish?
Not really.
What kind of drives them from place to place? Well,
That's a
they're
good
kind
question.
of driven by the currents.
Yeah.
Whatever's going on. Aren't we all a bit like
yes.
the fish?
A school of fish.
If we're not, and I think specifically Habakkuk saying mankind absent God is like this school of fish just getting blown by whatever the currents, what's the flavor of the month, or, and he continues, he brings them all up with a hook. He drags them out with his net. He gathers them in his drag nets. So he rejoices and he's glad. This is the footnote here is the wicked foe. This isn't necessarily God. This is like the enemy, or the Chaldean, the stereotypical Chaldean that's kind of being described. He's going to hook all these wayward people that are just flowing along with the current, whatever way things are going. And this type of person is going to sacrifices to his net. That thing that brings him profit and life is going to get his adoration. And so Habakkuk he's talking about the Chaldeans, they're perfectly happy to treat people like beasts. This way, what man is like absent from God. And this starts to lead into Habakkuk's second problem. So if his first problem is, wait a minute, God, how can you use these wicked people? At least we're kind of better than them, right? That's not good. That's not right.
It's not fair.
Grappling. Yeah, it's not fair, God. So, his second problem is completed with this parable or analogy with the fishing and the nets. Is he then to keep on emptying his net and mercilessly killing nations forever?
He being God or he being the Chaldeans?
The Chaldeans, this prototypical. We're talking about this stereotypical
bad guy.
Yeah, the bad guy being pictured in the Chaldeans specifically. So the second problem is Habakkuk saying, if problem number one is true, if the Chaldeans are allowed to run rampant and destroy us, which you've said is going to happen, God, but they're more wicked than even your people. If that's true, if your people aren't enough of a reason to stop them, are they just going to go on and on? Like, is anything going to stop them?
Right, because if you're not going to protect the more righteous, then there's nothing left. Because in a way, you started with Assyria and Nineveh, and they were horrible.
Right.
And now it's like God goes, yeah, well, watch the next bad guy. He's even bigger and stronger and more powerful. And now we've got the Chaldeans who are that big, and so
who's to stop them from ever? They're just going to rampage around the entire world at this point, God. If I'm understanding, and maybe there's a bit of like Habakkuk is stretching the logic a bit to try and like maybe see if God will relent a little bit. Maybe. But those are the two problems here that Habakkuk is now raising. And so you can see the flow or the progression of the conversation, where it's starting with Habakkuk seeing the immediate problem around him, God saying, well, the solution is the problem's going to get worse. And now Habakkuk saying, well, if that's true, like, is this going to just go on unchecked?
Right, it's never ending then.
And that's where this chapter essentially ends.
I know. So I'm looking at that going, do we need verse 1 of chapter 2? Because that's still part of his response.
There a second.
As I'm looking in your daughter's Bible, I have to ask every week if I can borrow it.
I think that we can hold that for next week, because that's a good.
That's a good segue.
Yeah, it's
to
a
the
good
Lord's
segue.
respond. So ultimately, we don't have a good solution yet. To when you come to God and go, hey, I'm going to vent, God might respond with some attitude.
Mm-hmm.
But Habakkuk's left with more questions then. He
Right.
still doesn't have an answer,
No.
which in a way, isn't that true of sometimes our prayers?
Right.
I walk away with more questions.
But Habakkuk still feels the ability to come to God with his more questions. It's not like God shut him down. God's open to the dialogue.
Maybe seeking it.
Yeah.
In some capacity.
So that gives me hope.
Right.
In that sense, like, it's okay to go back.
Right. And if you just get more questions.
Right. That's okay.
Because it draws you back to God.
Right.
So let's take a Revive Our Hearts quote. Anything that
makes me need
God is a blessing.
Right.
Because if I haven't said it yet on the podcast, and I haven't, Bryan does work for Revive Our Hearts. So I'm glad he knew that very common standard quote that Nancy does. Do you know the other one she uses a lot? It's 2 words.
Yes, Lord.
No. Oh, that's that one. Yeah, that one too. Heaven rules.
Heaven rules.
Oh, yeah.
So you might not get Employee of the Month this month because you didn't know all 3.
I at least had a 2-word quote.
But like we're doing, we're keeping these short and simple because we're kind of following the dialogue and the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's summertime and we know it's busy. But we have 2 more chapters in Habakkuk. We're obviously not going through a whole chapter in one setting because Bryan is here. He likes to take here. We would have been an hour with just chapter 1.
Yeah.
So we broke it into 3 shorter podcasts to make it easier for listening. But as always, we would love for you, after you hear all these, if you want to get a group together to do a Bible study and to go through, because to me, I just go, there's so much in this book that I don't think I've ever had. I don't know how many sermons on Habakkuk I've actually ever heard, truthfully. But to dig in a little bit deeper, a little bit slower, allows us to just pull out so much more. Mm-hmm. And then even as we're doing it, we're seeing connections to some of those other prophets. Mm-hmm. Because truthfully, Habakkuk could have said like Jonah did, I want to die.
Yeah.
Right, I'm out.
I'm outta here.
Jonah didn't even dialogue with God.
No.
He ran
Right.
and then ran up some more. And then, okay, fine, I'll obey, but I'm going to do the bare minimum.
Yeah.
And then he did vent to God when he's chapter 4, pouting.
And God destroyed his plant.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so you
yeah.
you see the different ways you can approach God.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we can learn from Habakkuk. Okay, don't be Jonah. Don't shut down the conversation. Habakkuk's at least willing to,
Right.
I'll keep trying.
Right.
I'll keep coming back.
I'm still not understanding.
Right.
But
Which is helpful.
I think it encourages us to press in
Yeah.
to God. And, we're all going to encounter difficult times in life. And this book of the Bible is one that I think we can gain encouragement from. We can gain maybe a model of how to approach. And like we've mentioned already, watch Habakkuk and how he grows and matures in this, because by the end, he will be approaching God in a much different spot. And again, not that it's easy. It's not a microwave process, but it is a good model and good encouragement for us when we're struggling with things that are just, I'm sure this was overwhelming for him to
I can't imagine knowing destruction is in your future.
Honestly, so the first verse of the book it's an oracle, right? Of Habakkuk. The word oracle is burden in Hebrew.
Oh.
It's a burden. I mean, think of
This would be a burden.
the heavenly burden that was upon a prophet like this.
Was he married?
Don't know.
Okay. I feel bad for his wife if he was.
I'm sure he
Why
was
are you so burdened and downcast today, dear?
he's a blast at parties, I'm sure.
I would be like, please don't tell me anything.
Don't invite Habakkuk again to the party.
Right. So I just real quick, what made you pick this book to study like this?
I'm making my way through the 12.
Okay. So it's
So
just
it was-
chronological.
It was, I don't know if it was chronological, but it was the next one on my list.
We should have you come and just do, because you've done
The whole 12.
Amos and what? You've also done Micah,
Haggai.
Haggai,
Which is why you have
Nahum,
a child with that middle
Joel.
name.
Yes.
Nahum. I'd like Nahum.
You should
a
do
lot.
Nahum again.
Wonder where I could.
That was an
Just-
interesting one. Where could you do Nahum?
Yeah.
Yeah. We got plans for him.
So you'll have to write in and say which book of the 12 you want to hear
No.
next.
Don't say that. I will put up some kind of like
Survey.
quiz survey. Yes. All right. So this is the Context and Color of the Bible podcast. As always, we hope you find these conversations intriguing, interesting, encouraging, lighthearted. We do have fun down here. Eric and I have a lot of laughter doing this. When Bryan comes, it's fun. But as always, we'll talk to you later.